When we think of our worship ministries, we typically break them up into two teams. We have the creative team that is on the stage and playing in the band, and then we have the production team that's in the back of the room running sound and lights and all that technical stuff. But I think it's important for the tech team to also see what they do as creative, even if what they do looks different than those on the stage with the skinny jeans and the hats. Hi, I'm Dave Dolphin at practicalworshipblog.com, sharing ideas, tips, and practical advice for the everyday worship leader. On this channel, we have weekly videos that help you lead a worship band and be a leader of people. So if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next video. When we structure the worship team, we generally have a creative side, and we use that word creative. And then we have a technical side. You've got people singing and playing instruments and creating the music, and then you have people that are doing technical things like running sound and lights and ProPresent. But I think all of that is creative, and I think it's important for us as leaders of worship ministries to help everyone to see how what they do as creative, from the stage to the booth. When I was at the FILO conference back in May, I had a chance to sit down and talk with Stephen Brewster about this very idea. Brewster is a creative coach that has worked with Elevation and Life.Church and Saddleback and has a lot of wisdom when it comes to working with churches, specifically in the area of worship and using creativity in the church. Here with Stephen Brewster, we're at the FILO conference, and one of the questions that I wanted to pose to him is that since this conference is specific to tech people, and you being a creative guy, and that's kind of your wheelhouse, so are tech people, like, what they're doing, is that just as creative, what's happening on the stage? Or like, how can you help tech people to see what they do as something that's inspirational and creative?
Well, there's no question that it's creative. Everyone was born to be creative. The fifth word in the Bible is created. And so it's the first indication of God's nature, of how He made us in His image. And so we all have the ability and authority to be creative. It's just a matter of how we choose to engage that creativity and develop that muscle. We're not all artists, but we all have the ability to be creative. And creative is problem solving, creative is solutions, creative is identifying a new or different way to get where we need to go. And most of the tech teams that I've worked with, especially in smaller churches, they have every week they're being creative in how they're problem solving to make services happen. And so leaning into that creativity and feeling the permission to be creative is such an important part of how we become who God's called us to be.
So you have, I'll play the devil's advocate here.
Sure.
So you've got someone who's running sound, they're like, well, I'm not creating anything, I don't have an instrument, I'm not singing, I'm just taking something that someone else has created and I'm just pushing it down a pipeline. I'm just handing it off to someone else.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I would say that they're vastly undervaluing the importance of their ministry. A soundboard is a bunch of sounds that the equivalent of paint, and the room is the canvas. And so how are you going to create an environment that is welcoming, that is artistic, creative, and doesn't become distractionary for a guest? And that's as much of an art as singing a song or playing a guitar. Okay, so for churches that are maybe like in the 200 member size or whatever, you've got the only full-time staff member is the worship pastor. Yep.
Anyone that is on that tech team or that media team, they're all volunteer. So how can you encourage worship leaders who are leading a ministry to help those people that are running ProPresenter and running sound and lights and cameras to see what they do as a creative thing, not just pushing buttons? So
the first thing is you have to prepare them to win on a weekend. And so they should never come in and feel not set up to win. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we make as leaders. We don't prepare the way for our volunteers. So prepare the way. When there's margin, there's space to be creative. There's space to figure out how to sync the lights with the background color. There's ways to make sure that the font treatment and the spacing is the best that we can make it. And so setting up our teams to win in advance, most vital thing that you can do in an environment like we discussed. The other thing is creating intentional environments where teams get to create. So Sundays may not be the opportunity to create. If you're in a set up, tear down environment, you may not have any margin to create there. But maybe like one Wednesday a month or once a quarter, you're having a creative night where we're bringing a lot of different people together and we're making something for the service. And that's giving everyone the chance to be part of the process.
Yeah, and I remember, I think it was Whit George that I heard him say that, like, some people, even from a musician standpoint, some people are hippies and some people are being counters.
Yep.
And so even having a different approach to creative doesn't, because you don't look like the other creatives, the ones wearing the skinny jeans and all that, just because you don't fit that mold doesn't necessarily mean that creative. I'm actually more of that bean counter type person, and yet I'm the worship pastor, and it took me a long time to realize, okay, even though I am different and I approach creativity differently, I'm still creative.
Absolutely, absolutely. Creativity has nothing to do with the expression. It has everything to do with your process. It has everything to do with how you're going to approach and look at things and incite change. And so, I mean, never ever, it's the book by its cover thing. You never allow yourself to overvalue the skinny jeans and undervalue your own personal creativity. Because there's a lot of not creative people that are wearing skinny jeans.
Now, while I was at the FILO conference last spring, I had a chance to sit down with several other people, and because it was the FILO conference, a lot of those discussions centered around the technical arts. From that trip, I've put together a small playlist of 3 or 4 videos you might want to check out right over here. That one down there is pretty good as well, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you know when the next video releases from practicalworshipblog.com.